Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the no disclaimers book tag. Now I'm pretty sure I was tagged in this, but I can't remember by who or if it was multiple people, but anyway, I'm doing the tag and I will link the original down below. I feel like I've seen quite a few people doing this tag recently and it seemed like a lot of fun. So here we go, here it is, the no disclaimers. So I won't put a disclaimer on it at all. Question number 1. Which tropes in books annoy you the most? And I think for me it is the miscommunication trope. It is just so annoying. I'm like, just talk, communicate, just use your words. Like, you have a voice, use it. And it just frustrates me to no end. And I'm like, why? Oh, it seriously bugs me when people do not talk, especially when there's no reason. When there is no reason for the miscommunication. When they're just like thinking about things in their head. When they're like almost okay, or when they almost say something. When they're about to say what's happening, and then like the phone rings or someone arrives or something, and I'm like, and it literally says that she was about to open her mouth or she started talking, and then something happens, and I'm like. And then you know that whatever they were going to say is going to impact later on, and the other person's going to be annoyed because they weren't told. And I'm like, oh, it bugs me. Like, I just read You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle, and there's a lot about that book that I liked. And you're following these characters that are engaged to be married, but they've ended up falling out of love. And I'm just like, if they would just speak to each other, they would understand the other person's position. Like, just talk. I think that is the one that annoys me the most. I mean, most tropes I can get behind. Like, when you have tropes such even a love triangle, I can get behind it. Even like insta love, I can probably get behind it. Like, Strange the Dreamer is pretty insta lovey. I love that book. Like, most tropes I can get behind. Like, Here Comes the Cavalry, love it. Chosen One, all the fantasy tropes. Fantasy tropes, I think I can pretty much get behind. Like, all of those ones, I can appreciate them. But when it's the miscommunication one, I'm like, what was the point in that? Which writers do you feel is overrated or overhyped? So I feel that I like this author's books. And this isn't saying I don't like them. I'm saying I like these author's books. I think they are good books, but I think they get too much hype. And that's Leigh Bardugo, and in specifically the Grishaverse. I think the Grishaverse is overhyped. I mean, I think it's good. I've read all of it. I've read the original Shadow and Bone trilogy. I've read the Six Crows duology. I've read the King of Scars duology. I've read the lot. I've watched the TV show, and I really liked everything that I have consumed of that fandom. Like, I like it. I like it. And for me, Ninth House is better. I loved Ninth House. Ninth House was 5 stars. All the rest of the Grisham books have been like 3 to 4 stars, like somewhere in that range. I mean, apart from the King of Scars duology, that's more like 2 to 3. But I have pretty much liked everything that I've read in the Grishaverse. But I think it's overhyped because none of it's been 5 stars. It's all just been good. It's good, but it's just not amazing. I want to like hug this book, shout about this book, wave this book around and tell everyone to read it. No, the Grishaverse doesn't do that for me. So I think there's one writer that I think is overhyped. What are your least favourite books that you've read since joining BookTube? So I discovered BookTube in 2014, and since 2014, I've been watching BookTube pretty regularly. I've been enjoying it as a form of content to consume. And so since then, I've read a lot of books up and down, and I'd say that BookTube has definitely influenced my reading quite a bit, because so much of what I've read since starting to watch BookTube has been influenced by what other people have been reading. But since actually joining and creating my own content back last September, there are a couple of books that come to mind that are my least favourite. The one that I DNF'd earlier this year was Sea of Ruin, because it was so problematic. I just couldn't do it. I talk about it more in my March wrap up, because if you want details, because I don't really want to get into it, but could not deal with that book. One of the other ones that really comes to mind, and that was towards the beginning of my channel back in like September, October time, is Rage of Dragons. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get the hype for Rage of Dragons. I don't. I tried. I think the prologue was a really good prologue, and I would have liked the whole book to have been about the characters in the prologue. I just couldn't get Tao. I could not get behind him. I could not get the absolutely awful female representation and how the female characters were used as a plot device and just a means of giving us the world building and for the characters' lust. No, it was just not for me. Lots of people love Rage of Dragon, but it seems to be a very divisive book because, well, I can't get behind it. No. So there you go. Oh, this feels very negative. I don't feel like I've done a negative video in a while. Like, I feel like I've been putting out very positive content and all the things that I love and like gushing. So it feels a bit weird to be saying all my negative opinions. Oh. What is a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book? And I don't think, in general, I feel like books generally like stick the endings, or like I don't feel like I've read that many books with terrible endings. One that I did think of, and it's not necessarily a terrible ending to a specific book, it's more that I didn't like the ending of a trilogy, and that's the Burning God. I think this is like Game of Thrones season 8, where a lot of us don't mind where the ending got us to, we just didn't like the execution of how we got to it. Like, it just felt rushed, and so we didn't necessarily mind how it ended, we just didn't like the season because of how rushed it felt. And I'd say the same with this. Like, I didn't mind how this book ended, I didn't mind where we got to, I just didn't like how we got to it. And the thing is, this is because I love book 1, but I think book 1 was my favourite, the Poppy War. Like, I really, really like the Poppy War, and I liked the Dragon Republic, but I can't get behind this. Like, I guess this is another one where well, it's not least favourite, this one was just disappointing. Like, I can see that I like the writing style, and I really liked the first like third of this, and then the characters didn't feel like the characters that we came to know and love. Like, I didn't really support the characters in it, I didn't understand their motivations. It felt like there was so much potential, and then there were some things that were just solved in a sentence, some things just weren't solved at all. Like, so I'd say that this is a very disappointing conclusion to a trilogy. Which fictional character do you wish was not killed off? I mean, this is like spoilers galore, like spoilers. So it's a very like bizarre question to ask. Like, killing characters off as like a thing, I don't mind it. Like, obviously I get attached to characters, I get attached to them, but I think if you can kill off a character and kill them off in such a successful way that I am emotionally invested in that character's death, then I think you've done it well. I think it's a good thing. As long as if you kill a character, they better stay dead. Like, if that character is dead, they're dead. I do not, okay, going back to the tropes thing, the resurrection trope, no, don't like it. So if you're killing a character, kill the character. Don't try to bring them back, otherwise there's just no stakes. There's no stakes. So there isn't really a character that I like wish that they didn't die. Like, if you killed them all successfully, then I'm satisfied, because I was so emotionally satisfied by that, like emotionally invested in that death. I will say, like, John Gwyn, he kills his characters. Like, no one is safe in John Gwyn's books. Like, no one. Like, I'm scared for everyone, especially in like Shadow of the Gods. I'm scared for them all. I'm scared that any of them could die. Like, he doesn't care if you're a POV character, any character, like, you could die. Anyone in that world could die. And yeah, Faith and the Fallen, Upload Men, anyone could die. And so there are some characters in that book, I'm not going to say who in particular, but when characters die in his books, I'm like, no. Like, I have literally like shouted at books and like gone, how dare you? So if you've read any of John Gwyn's books, you'll probably know that some of the deaths are quite hard to process. We'll leave it at that. What are some of your bookish pet peeves? I mean, if you're thinking about, like, there's different things. Like, if you're thinking about content of the book or like the aesthetics of a book, like aesthetically, I don't necessarily mind if books are different heights. Like, I know that's a pet peeve for a lot of people, but I don't necessarily mind if the books are different sizes. Like, so many of my books are different sizes, because I might have like a paperback, like here, I've got the like paperback of Bear and the Nightingale, and then I have 2 hardbacks. I don't mind. I don't mind it if like the first book is a paperback and then the rest are hardbacks. But I couldn't go from like the first book being in hardback and then a paperback and then a hardback. I can't have that. What does annoy me is if you... Okay, so for The Way of Kings and the Stormlight Archive, I have The Way of Kings in hardback because they re-released it in hardback. And I was like, oh, yes, A Way of Kings hardback. I also have Rhythm of War in hardback. But there's no signs of them re-releasing Words of Radiance and Oathbringer in hardback. Just let me know. Like, let me know if it's coming or not. I want a yes or a no. Like, tell me, are we getting a re-release of Words of Radiance and Oathbringer in hardback? Because I need to know. Because I cannot bring myself to buy paperbacks of Words of Radiance in the double, because it's going to be doubles, 2 editions of Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. And because I have a hardback of the 1 and 4, I can't just have paperbacks in the middle. Like, I just can't do it. So I just need to know. I need to know if we're going to get a hardback of books 2 and 3. Like, tell me, please, Glance, are we going to have hardbacks? Because I want to know. I want a release date. Like, please. If you're going to re-release a hardback of an out-of-print first book, then can you please re-release the hardback of the out-of-prints 2 and 3 as well? Because it's really pissing me off. It's annoying me. It's really, really annoying me. What are some books that you feel deserve more recognition? Oh, this is positivity. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We love positivity. Love it. Right. Sharing joys and joys of reading. So I have videos on underhyped books. I will link my underhyped books recommendation, but a couple of new ones that I've read since posting that video I have here. And I think I do try and like read a mixture of, like, I don't know if I necessarily read that many hyped books, but like I do try and read books that receive less hype, and so I can share the love for them. So a couple of ones that I've read this year and want to share the love for is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is the first Octavia E. Butler book that I read, and I really, really liked it. I really, really like this book. And this, you are following, well, it's hard to say that because it's a hard book to read. Like, I really liked it, but it was challenging in its content, because you're following a main character, Dana, and she goes back into the 1800s. She's a black woman from the 1970s, and she goes back into the 1800s, and suddenly she's at risk of being part of the slave trade and the struggles of that as she tries to save one of her ancestors. And she keeps getting sucked back into this past. And it's a very dangerous time for her. And oh, I felt for her. I was like, oh. And the struggles that she has to go through, the struggles. And the thing is, you know, although this is fiction, you know what she's going through is real and happened to so many people. And I'm like, this happened to people. People went through this. People suffered this. And so it was just so... I was going to say, like, eye-opening, but the thing is, I know this happened. Like, I know this is our history, but it's still hard to read, and it still, like, makes you come to it makes you confront that part of our history and, like, confront it and go, I know this has happened in our world, and this is what people did and what people came to. So I would strongly recommend this, and I can't wait to read more Octavia E. Butler books, because I think she deserves so much more recognition, and she deserved it back when she was writing. And the other underhyped recommendation that I have today is the Divine Cities series by Robert Jackson Bennett. I read this whole trilogy back in January. I binged the whole thing because I just had so much fun with it. It was so much fun. And this is like a world where the gods have died, and the gods like created miracles. So you have cities like that were built on these miracles, and you sort of have the conflict of this one island that didn't have a divinity, and so they developed technologically, and now they sort of have control over the continent where the gods ruled. And it's really interesting. It's a really interesting, like, political system and world. And each book you're following a different protagonist. So you have the 3 characters that you meet in here, and then each book focuses on one of them. And it spans many, many, many years, like 30 years between the first book and the third book. So you really get to see these characters grow. And it was just such a satisfying series. It was really, really satisfying. I have a whole review of the whole trilogy, which I can link. So I would strongly recommend checking the series out. So those are a couple of underhyped recommendations. Oh, I just love spreading joy. I love talking about books that I love. And then the final question is, what are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? I mean, it seems like a silly question, like, don't do it. Like, why? Because the thing is, if you don't like a book, just don't read it. Just don't read it. Like, you don't have to ban it. You don't have to say, all of you can't read this book because I don't like it and I don't support it. Like, just don't read it. Just don't promote it if you don't like it. But what I've noticed recently, and I think is worse than fully banning a book, is by editing it and censoring out passages of a book without advertising that. So I have a whole video on how books differ between the US and the UK, and I'm not talking about the aesthetics of the book, I'm talking about the content and how scenes can be different. So that I have a whole video talking about that, whether that's like just changing in phrases, that they were edited differently, they had different editors depending on the publishing house, whether that's they had different endings. So some books have different endings between the US and the UK, and then there are some books where scenes are cut out and removed. So I think that in some ways is worse, and especially if publishers do not advertise and do not tell the reader that they have removed scenes and censored it. And I think that is much, much worse than saying this book is banned. Because as readers, we do not realise that we are being censored by the publishing industry. The example book that I have is the Amber Spyglass, where a scene specifically was removed for the US market because they censored it. So if you want the full Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, then get the UK edition. Other ones that I found out recently, this is in addition to the books that I mentioned in that video, are the Joe Abercrombie books. Those differ between the US and the UK. I don't know to how the extent, but I've heard that whole passages and paragraphs are different between the two countries. And the one that I found out just yesterday is the first sentence is different in She Who Became the Sun by Shirley Parker Chan between the US and the UK. And that's because they decided to market the book differently. In the US, they're marketing it for the fantasy audience, whereas in the UK, they're marketing it for the fantasy as well as the historical fiction audience and trying to get both markets. So that's just, it's been said that the first sentence is different, but if the first sentence is different, I don't know if there are other differences that are being changed. So if you can't tell, I'm very passionate about this subject because I feel as though we don't get like news about it. I don't feel as though it's advertised, and I feel that I want to make it known that the publishing industry is hiding things from us. I don't know if and it just seems very sneaky that they don't advertise when books have different endings or changes. So if you want the full video, that's linked, but those are my thoughts on censorship and banning books. Those are all of the questions in the No Disclaimers book tag. Let me know if you have any thoughts that you feel shouldn't be disclaimed and have any controversial opinions. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!